Hi, this is Elizabeth with Felted Sky, here with the instructions for our Fall Foliage Needle Felting Kit in our Painting with Wool series of kits. So let's go ahead and open up the box and talk about what's inside. So first we have the instruction sheet and the beginner's guide to needle felting. So this is just some good general information that you would want to read if you're new to needle felting before you get started. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. And then in the instruction sheet, I just want to mention one thing, and that is that these extra sets of numbers at the side of each step here, that is the time stamp for the video. So you could fast forward or rewind to watch whatever part you want to go back to or skip around and go forward to. So you can use the timestamp there to do that easily. So in the kit we have two types of wool. Most of the wool in here is our felter's fleece. So this is a very pretty wool batting. It's kind of got a heathered effect. And here the black is our felter's flowing wool. So with the fleece, you'll want to just unroll it before we get started. So find the end and unroll, and then you'll also want to unfold. It's folded over, so find those edges and get your wool ready before we get started. So this one's fairly long. Sometimes you'll also have more of a square, but whatever piece you have, it should be enough to do the project so we can make it work. There's that. You may also want to keep a little piece of it with the label, or kind of keep your label close by, kind of note what the color name is as you're taking off the label. So we do refer to the color name, I do, in the instruction sheet and in the video. So this is the flowing wool. This is a roving. So you'll want to just unfold it, and it's twisted. It's a little hard to see with the black one here, but it's also folded in half, so you just want to open all that up and get that ready also before we get started. And again, note the color names as you're taking off the labels in case you would want to reorder some of these or just to keep track for doing the project. Alright, we'll move that out of the way, and I'm going to pull out a few more things. So of course in here we have the nice wood hoop. So this one is made in the UK. It's got some high quality hardware on it so that we'll be able to use that for framing at the end. And then in here we also have the linen fabric, which I'm pulling out. Here we go. So this is the linen fabric that we're going to use as the backing of the picture. So I really like using this for this type of project, and you'll want to unroll that and unfold that as well before we get started. You may want to iron it, but I often use it without ironing and it will work fine either way. So that is the linen fabric. And then we have the needles in their tube. So this is our cute little paper tube, and inside you'll have two blue needles in this kit. And you can see on the back of the tube that these are the 38 star. So if you would need to reorder, that's the type of needle for this project. And you have two of them just so there's a spare in case you do happen to break one. Breaking needles does happen sometimes, especially when you're new to felting. So just a little bit about how I recommend holding the needle. So I actually don't recommend holding with 2 fingers at the top like that, or with 3 fingers at the top like that. I sometimes see people new to felting doing those. What I do recommend is to put the top of the needle kind of in the crook of your pointer finger, something like that, and then put your middle finger and thumb down lower on the needle. So that's just a better way to hold it, and some people like to put their ring finger also down there as well, lower on the shaft of the needle. So that's just hopefully going to help you be a little more efficient, have better control with your needle, and maybe go straight in and straight out easier and break less needles. So that's how you'll be felting, or at least that's my recommended grip. And right, so now we also need to talk about a few other things that you'll need to complete the project. The most important is a mat. So this is our foam mat, and if you have a different foam mat, as long as it's big enough, it should still work. But you'll want something nice and firm, and of course this is the most economical option, is foam, but it's not going to last forever, so it does wear out after a number of these types of projects. And depending on how much you're poking, it could wear out faster or slower depending on what you're using it for. But anyway, it does work fine, and a lot of people start out on foam. Now my favorite though, which is more of an upgrade, if you're doing a lot of felting, you might want to invest in a wool mat. So this is the one that we make here at Felted Sky. It's kind of just a big slab of wool. Here I've already done a little bit of felting on this side, but mostly I've been felting on this side. So here's what it looks like after a couple months of felting. Pretty many flat projects on here already, but it's holding up wonderfully well. It's not really wearing out at all. It does collect a lot of the fuzz, but this is going to last for a very long time, so it is the more eco-friendly option. And I just really like working with the wool. So I worked on foam for quite a few years before I found the wool mats, but they are my new favorite. Alright, so you'll also need a scissors to complete the project, just to cut the fabric, the extra fabric off at the end. And you'll need some type of glue. So I'm going to use my hot glue gun, but if you don't have one, other types of craft glue should also work to glue your fabric to the hoop in the end. So the last thing to talk about is tools. So let me just grab my tools. So these are three that I recommend. I've tried many different ones. So this one is a good single needle tool if you find that you don't like holding your needle with just your fingers and you want something with a little more comfortable of a grip. You could put the needle that came in the kit right into this tool, and it does work very nice, gives a nice comfortable grip. So that is an option if you want to have a single needle tool. And this one I use the most during this type of project. So this is a 5 needle tool made by Clover. It does make rather an annoying noise with the spring action, but it does such a nice job that I put up with it. So it does just help the project to go faster, as you'll see on the video. I do use this during the video, and yeah, it might be one you want to invest in, but you can still do the project just with the single needle if you're not ready to get a tool. This is the last one. I may or may not use it in the video, but I do like this one. I grab it more for sculpting, not as much for flat, but this has 3 needles, and it does also help this to go a little bit faster if that's the one you already have, or you're just thinking of getting one. That one is also a good one. So here's what they look like in their packaging if you're going to go ahead and get some tools. You could check your local store, or of course we carry these, and you can find them at other places online as well. Alright, so now that we've gone over all of those things, now we're ready to get started. So you'll want to get out your mat and your fabric and your hoop, and then we're going to get out the first color that we need, which is blue spruce. So I'm going to go ahead and tear right into this wool, and we need to get a piece that's kind of square shaped for the middle of the picture. So mine happens to be a little thin. It's hard to see on the video, but if you feel like your piece is thin and you still are seeing fabric showing through, just add another layer. If your piece seems thick enough and you're not seeing any fabric, you can just use 1 layer. So now I'm just going to start poking in with my needle. So you want to go through the wool and through the fabric and down into the mat. So you should be hearing the mat. And if you're on foam, it has a very distinctive sound. You'll hear that sound of going into the mat. If If you're on wool, it doesn't make as much of a noise, but you can still hear and feel that. So that's what you want. And we're just going to be poking. So we need to poke all over this wool until it is flattened out and well attached to the fabric, and it's not going to be as fuzzy anymore. That's how we'll know that we've poked it enough. And you'll still see puncture holes, but I don't think they're quite as noticeable once we've done enough poking on the wool. So this is really what needle felting is. It's really a pretty simple technique. There are just nuances, and you do get faster and better as you go along. So here I'm going to go ahead and switch to my tool. It's just going to help this part go faster. For the video, we don't want it to drag out too much. So here's what it would look like if you went ahead and used your tool. So I use it on these background layers where we just need to get in a bunch of one color, cover a larger area, and you can felt more quickly with the tool. Here is that other 3-needle tool that I talked about. Don't always use that as much, but we'll get it in here a little bit just so you can see this one in action. But again, if you don't have the tool, you just continue on with the single needle until it's looking the same way. It just takes a little bit longer. Alright, there it is. That's pretty good. So just checking it. And now is the time where if you see any areas that fabric is still showing through, if you have any thin spots, you can add a little piece and then just poke it right down, and it will blend in and you'll never even know that you had to add something there. So it's just good to check as you go along, make sure you're getting enough coverage with the wool, and you can definitely add more layers if not, if you had some thin spots. Alright, so now we're going to grab the roving called Raven, and here on my original I'm going to show you we're just putting in these little tiny trees with thin black lines. Those are in the distance. So we build this picture in layers, and this is where we put the first trees. So I'm pulling out the end of the roving, as you see, and making it into a thinner line so that I can use that for the trees. So I like to get it started by poking at the top there, and then you can kind of pull it out and thin it out as you go down, and then poke as you go along. So I'm poking from top to bottom, making my line fairly thin. And then when I get down to the bottom here, we're going to be pulling off the extra. You just need to poke up and down that line of roving until it seems like it's all the way attached. And then hold and pull off the bottom there. So we don't need to worry about what's going on at the bottom because all that's going to get covered up with other layers. So here I'll start putting in another one. So again, poke at the top and then pull your roving down, and you can pull as you go along there like that to thin it out. So we just need these to be fairly thin lines for our trees in the distance. So poking up and down the line till it seems like all those fibers are attaching. And if you happen to put in a line that you don't like, you can pull the whole thing up. It will still come off. Here we're going to go ahead and put in a branch. So I'm attaching the end of my line of roving, kind of headed off in the opposite direction so I can pull it up this time. You just overlap, poke it in to the trunk, and then pull it off in whatever direction you want your branch to go. So again, we're not worrying about the edges because all of those are going to get covered up by other layers. And put another tree in here. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video. We have many layers to put on, so we just need to move along on the video. So there's another tree going in, and maybe one more right next to it. So I like to make these a little bit different, leaning different ways. Might put in one more branch on, maybe going up this way. You want to think about how those trees would look in nature and make them a little bit varied. Alright, that should do it for our trees in the distance. So now I'm going to get the oatmeal wool, and I'm going to bring my hoop back so I can kind of see where this will be in the picture. And I'm going to pull out the end of the oatmeal wool just a little bit. We're going to put in the path. So I want to just lay it out and curve it around. I'm just going to work with the wool until I get it laying where I want it. So it's going to need to be something like this, and you can see I'm using the hoop to get it into position. So it starts just a little below the midline, the halfway point, and start it here a little bit more, not all the way to the right side of the hoop, but to the edge of our blue spruce wool, and then I'm going to poke it down. You can see I'm kind of moving the wool into place and concentrating on the edges first. So I'm using my other hand some, but do watch your fingers. I am very practiced and good at not poking myself, but you do want to watch your other fingers and try not to poke yourself. So you can keep your other hand farther out of the way if you want. I kind of move the wool into place both with the tip of my needle, moving it very gently, and then also using my other hand, but carefully. So I'm just going to keep poking on the edges and then in the middle of the path till we get this all the way poked down. And again, I'll speed it up so you can still see what I'm doing, but we get moving along on the video. So here I'm adding a little piece. I saw that there was a place that seemed too thin, where I was maybe seeing those trees through there just a little too much. You want this to be thick enough that you're not seeing our other layers underneath. And that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to get the evergreen colored wool, and we're going to put in pieces of this. So I'm going to put my first piece under the path here and tear off. I'm going to arrange that there. I'm going to put a little bit thicker of a piece above the path in front of our trees that we put in. So I think of this kind of like a row of bushes right there, the edge of the path. And then get my hoop back so I can see where I need to put this. So I'm going to put one piece or a few little pieces up here at the top. And then we still need a little bit more. Bring the hoop back. It's always good to see where this is going to go and make sure that it's going to be in the picture once we frame it in the hoop. So I'm going to put some more on the right side. And you can see I fiddle around with it and do some arranging as long as I need to get it all where I want it to go. We want to go outside of the hoop a bit just to make sure we're covered there, but that part is going to get folded around to the back side for the most part. Alright, so I'm putting some more pieces up higher on the left side. Alright, this might be good enough. So that's what you want your evergreen to look like, basically. And then I'll get my needle back and start poking. So for this, again, I usually start with edges. Make sure I'm getting a nice edge down here at my path. I don't want to cover it up too much. I want to go right up to that path, but not really overlap it too much. So just kind of gently pushing and pulling that wool into place. You can do a lot of that with the bottom of the needle as long as you're gentle with it. If you put too much pressure on the bottom of the needle, that's when it can snap. So you don't want to give it a reason to do that, but just the gentle pushing and pulling of the wool is usually okay. And I'll speed up again here just so I can get all of this in. This does take a bit to get all of this evergreen poked down. And I can hit it with the tool a bit. I'm not going to do that middle part right above the path. I want that to stay not quite all the way flattened out, but the rest of this I'll go ahead and flatten it all the way, and with the tool it just goes a little faster. So we have back to the single needle now, so I'm just working on that middle row of bushes. I want that to be popped up from the background just a little bit. It was a little bit thicker of a layer, and I'm just not wanting to flatten that quite all the way, just for a tiny bit of a 3D effect. Now there I was just showing that if you do need to pull up any wool, it's very easy to just pull off pieces that you put in that you might think are in the wrong spot. Just pull them off and reposition them and poke them down again. Or just pull off entirely. Alright, so now I've got the color called Gecko, and I'm going to put in some highlights. So these are very small wispy pieces that we want to pull off, and I'm opening up the fibers some, and I still want to see some of that dark green through there, so I'm not going to put this on as thick. It's going to be a very thin layer, and I still want to see some of that dark green. So I'll go ahead and start poking this down. Actually, I see one more spot where I want to put a little bit more, maybe down here. So it's very easy to add and take off if you need to. And we'll speed this up as well. There, I took a bit off. I'm going to do one more little piece down here. So you can just tinker as you go along. And there, that's looking pretty good. Alright, so this is the color Meadow, and I'm going to tear into it and we're going to fill in. So this is like filling in with grass all the rest of this bottom area in our picture. So on both sides we're going to be putting this, and you might need multiple pieces. You can see I'm using more than one piece to fill in. And we'll put some on the other side as well. I want this to look a little more like a hill coming down here. So there we have that piece. That worked out well as just one piece. I'll check with my hoop to make sure enough of this is going to be in the picture again. And then start poking down. So again, I like to start with those edges. Make sure I'm going right up to my path, but not really overlapping it. And then I start poking the middle. And we'll speed up. Here I'm adding just a bit more to the path. Now that I have that grass in, I can see that I just want the path to be a little more filled out down there at the bottom. And here I'm putting in a little piece of that meadow just to fill in another little piece. Just making sure that everything is covered. I'm not seeing any fabric showing through. And now we'll start on the other side. And now I'm doing my hoop check. Tear a little of the extra off at the bottom. And if it helps you to turn the project as well, you can always turn it however you want. That helps you reach all the places. And now we're going to grab the color called Sunny Side Up. And there's going to be a tree on this side that's this color, so I think of this like the leaves that have fallen on the ground under that tree. So I want a piece of that there. I'll start poking that. Let me just get this other color as well. This is poppy, so on the other side there's going to be a red tree, and this is the leaves that have fallen on that side under that tree. And then also the color Fall Foliage. Put a little bit of that under my Sunny Side Up. So we're going to have these trees also kind of up higher on the picture. So I'm going to also put in a piece of this on the right side. That might be a bush. Some other plants over there. I'm going to do a hoop check to make sure all of this is showing enough in my picture. And I'm thinking now that on the left side here they've gotten down a little too low. Not going to be showing enough, so I'm going to raise my hill up a bit. So if I raise my hill with another piece of meadow, then I can maybe push up my other colors a little bit. So you see every picture turns out a little bit differently. I don't always get everything placed exactly right on the first go round, so we're just going to pull those up. They weren't very much poked yet anyway. Just going to move those up a little bit so that I'll be able to see them better once this is in the hoop. And that should work. So now we'll go ahead and poke down. So this picture has many layers, but I just love the way that it comes together in the end. These are very rich colors. I always enjoy working with these. Alright, so that's looking good. So the next thing we are going to do is get our raven roving again, the black, and put in some more tree trunks. So now our line, we're not going to pull it out quite as much. Here, I'll just show you. We're putting in these trees there, the bigger one on each side. So we have more trees to put in. So we're not going to pull the roving out into quite as thin of a line. We're going to keep it a little bit thicker than before. So starting at the top here, I'm going to poke the top well, get that attached, and then I'll start poking down my tree trunk. So this one is going to go down to where that hill is, that's the meadow colored wool, the green, lighter green. So I'm going to poke all the way down to where I want the trunk to end on the picture. And I need to poke that back and forth a few times to get it attached well enough. So I find that the roving I need to poke a bit more than the batting. Now I'm going to hold and tear off at the bottom, but this time we're going to poke down again to where we want that tree trunk to end, and then I'm going to fold up that little extra bottom piece and just overlap it back into the trunk. So this is just my favorite way to do a tree. I find that that works well for me, so hopefully you are having success with that. And that little extra bit, rather than cutting it or something, if we cut the wool, it's actually harder sometimes to get the fibers to go in place. So we'll just do it like that and hide that end back up into the trunk. Alright, so we'll do another one here. And I'm speeding up again. So I'm going to put in another one right next to that one. And again, I'm going to go down to where that hill is, and then I tore off and folded that little extra piece back into the trunk again. When you poke it down, it just disappears in there. So now I'm doing my thicker tree trunk. This is the one that we're seeing the most close up. So it needs to be a little bit thicker so that it looks like it is closer to us. And then I'm tearing off and kind of working with the bottom there. You can give it a hint of roots there if you want to, the way that you do the bottom. And I'm just checking to make sure this is going to show, but I'm going to put in one more slightly thinner tree trunk there. It's just going to go down to that hill that we put in, just down to that meadow green, and then fold that extra back up in. Alright, so on the other side I want a tree here. So this one is going to come down to the meadow on this side. And this could have gone a little farther to the left, but it's good enough. So now I'm going to check with the hoop, and we still have figure out where our bigger tree is going to go. Oh, so yeah, that might have needed to scoot over a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick that up and move it over. So it needed to go to the left after all. Otherwise, we wouldn't quite have room to get our bigger tree trunk in here. So that's coming down here to where our red wool was on our little grassy area with our leaves already in. So poking down to where we want that trunk to end, and then I'll fold back up on itself. . give this one a branch, so I'm just overlapping that wool on the trunk, and then we'll pull it up into a branch. Figure out where that branch should go. It just overlaps whatever's in back of it. Alright, so this is looking good. Just always like to check with the hoop to see what I'm going to see once we have it in the hoop. Now I'm getting fall foliage, this color again, and I'm going to put in some leaves on our trees. I usually do this in multiple pieces, and we could give a little piece to those trees in the distance. And now some more kind of at the top right. So just filling in until we've got that area covered. And now I'll start to poke down. Checking to see where the hoop is going to be, see if I need any more of this wool up there. I think we're okay. I might tear a bit off of that piece though. And I just remembered I also want a little bit on the path, just to look like more leaves have fallen. I'm going to put a little bit down on the path. Just small little pieces. Something like that. And this wool has multiple colors in it, so I have specifically taken out little pieces that had extra orange in them, the bright orangey color. So you can do that if you want. And now get them all poked down. Alright, so now we go back to sunny side up, our yellow, and going to arrange it to be our nice bright tree in the front. So thinking about how those leaves might look, how the shape of the tree might be. I'm going to do 3 pieces that don't totally overlap each other, so we see some of that trunk showing through some of those other trees behind it. So I don't want it too thick. I don't want to cover everything up. One more littler piece down at the bottom perhaps. Something like that. And on the other side, we're going to put some more of this poppy color, our red, and arrange this. So a little bit larger of a piece at the top. And I can fill it in a bit if I want with other small pieces. So we're just adding on until we have the trees looking however we want. So I think that's how I will leave it, and trying to decide, did I have too much wool there? Did I have the right amount? Go ahead and start poking. So we're nearing the end of the project. It's looking like it's supposed to look. Hopefully you're liking the way yours is coming together. And checking with my hoop again. I think I may need a little more of this evergreen color back here behind that tree. So I just add that in. And we'll speed up again. Let's finish up here. Getting our trees finished up. And I'm still adding a little wool and pushing and pulling and just messing with the shaping as I'm poking down. Okay, one more look with the hoop. And I'm thinking we are finished with all of our steps. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it up off the mat. It can take some tugging. It does get pretty attached with all of the poking, those fibers going through. That's how it's supposed to be, so just give it a good tug and off it comes. So now I'm going to take a look at it with it off the mat. Usually it loosens up since we don't have the mat to help hold those fibers. So then this is another important part. So we're not really finished yet until we go back over it and poke some more on any areas that seem fuzzy, that seem like they're not all the way attached to the fabric. And we can also add wool to any spots that look thin, or even change little things still if we see anything that we want to fix. So I will usually spend another 15 minutes to maybe even 30 minutes just poking all over again. So it really seems to need that to be well attached to the fabric. So I did the rest of that off camera though, so that we can go ahead and show you how to put into the hoop. So you will want to do all of that extra poking yourself before you do this, but then when you're ready you'll just figure out where you want to position it and get that hoop on. So usually it takes me a couple of times, sometimes more, to get it just in the right spot where I like all that I'm seeing with the picture, and then pull the fabric tight so that it's nice and tight in the hoop, nice and flat. And then once you're happy with it, be ready to tighten the screw. So then tighten it as much as you can, and there it is. So now we're just going to flip it over and going to get my scissors out, and we're going to cut the excess fabric off. So I just cut off about 1 inch from the hoop. So I'm just leaving about 1 inch of fabric there. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, and there we go. It's always kind of bits of fabric and fuzz. I like seeing the back side, so I'm not going to put any fabric or felt or anything to cover that up. All I'm going to do is glue the extra fabric here to that hoop for finishing. So there are other methods that you could use if you prefer, and you might already have a favorite method for finishing a hoop, or you can find other tutorials about hoop finishing methods on YouTube, or I'm sure plenty of blogs. This is just what I found that's quick and easy for me, and I think it still looks nice. And I like to see that picture coming through on the back side. Just fun to see that. So there we have it. I went all the way around, gluing the fabric to the hoop, and there it is. So I hope that you like the way that your picture turned out, and if you are in need of other kits or felting supplies, I hope you'll visit us at feltedsky.com, and we'd love to hear from you if you have comments or questions about this. And as always, happy felting!